The air smelled of copper and burning thatch. It was the specific, acrid scent of a containment curse dissolving the structural integrity of a building, giving way to the damp chill of a Scottish November night. Barnaby Finch was crouched behind a rain barrel outside the rear entrance of the hogshead, his knuckles white, his breath coming in short, shallow rasps that misted in the cold air. He was 17 years old, a seventh-year Hufflepuff who had never passed a Defense Against the Dark Arts practical exam with anything higher than an acceptable. And he was the only thing standing between 7 fully masked Death Eaters and a cellar full of second-year students who had been caught on the wrong side of the village when the anti-apparition wards slammed down. 180 seconds, that was the calculation. Barnaby had heard the distant crack of apparition signals from the Aura office, but the delay on the village wards meant help was 3 minutes out. The Death Eaters were 30 yards away, moving in a tight, predatory phalanx, their wands drawn with the casual lethality of soldiers who knew they were unopposed. There were 7 of them. Barnaby had 1 wand, if you could call it that. It was a thick, knotted length of blackthorn, barely sanded down, looking more like a piece of kindling snapped off a dying tree than a magical instrument. It vibrated in his hand, hot and unstable, humming with a low, aggressive pitch that made his palm itch. They called it the Firewood. That was the name the Slytherins had coined in his 4th year, and it had stuck because it was true. The wand didn't channel magic, it choked on it, spitting out sparks and smoke when he tried to cast delicate charms, overheating during transfiguration. It was a blunt instrument in a world that demanded scalpels. But as the green light of a killing curse hissed past the barrel, singing the hairs on his arm, Barnaby realized that tonight a scalpel would be useless. Tonight he didn't need to be precise. He needed to be a disaster. If you want to know how this forgotten witch turned a useless spell into Hogwarts' last defense, stay with me until the end of this story. The leader of the Death Eaters, a tall figure whose mask gleamed in the moonlight, raised his wand toward the heavy oak door of the cellar. Barnaby saw the tip glow violet, a blasting curse. It would turn the door into shrapnel and shred everyone inside. Barnaby didn't think. He stood up. Earlier that afternoon, in the safety of the charms classroom, Professor Flitwick had sighed the long, weary sigh of a man watching a hopeless case. Barnaby had been trying to cast a cheering charm on a teacup. Instead of turning the china pink and inducing happiness, the Firewood wand had shuddered, emitted a sound like a cracking whip, and shattered the cup into dust while scorching the desk. The Ravenclaws laughed. Even the Hufflepuffs looked away, embarrassed. "Perhaps, Mr. Finch," Flitwick had said gently, "magic requires a finesse you have not yet mastered. You force it. You must guide it." Barnaby stepped out from behind the barrel into the muddy alleyway. The Death Eaters paused. They saw a boy with messy hair, robes slightly too short at the ankles, holding a gnarly stick. One of them laughed. It was a cold, wet sound. "Look at this," the leader said, his voice muffled by the mask. "A hero. Go home, boy, before we bleed you." Barnaby didn't speak. He didn't have a witty retort. He was terrified. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He pointed the firewood at the cobblestones 5 feet in front of the Death Eaters. He didn't aim for them. He couldn't hit a moving target to save his life. He aimed for the ground. "Bombarda," he whispered. A normal blasting curse is a focused jet of energy designed to blow a hole in a wall or a door. When the firewood cast it, it was not a jet.
It was a radial failure of physics. The tip of the blackthorn wand exploded with a flash of orange light so bright it left after-images on the retina. The recoil nearly dislocated Barnaby's shoulder. The spell didn't just hit the ground. It seemingly deleted the space between the stones. A shockwave of compressed air and magical debris erupted outward in a 30-foot cone. It wasn't precise. It was a blunderbuss. The cobblestones shattered into buckshot, spraying the Death Eaters with high-velocity granite hail. The neat military formation broke instantly as 3 of the dark wizards were thrown backward, their shield charms overwhelmed by the sheer, uncompressed volume of the blast. 150 seconds left. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, broken only by the groans of a Death Eater clutching a knee that had been pulverized by a flying rock. Then the air filled with light. Red stunners, green curses, purple hexes, all converging on where Barnaby had been standing. But he was already moving. He scrambled behind a stack of crates, sliding in the mud. The crates exploded into splinters a second later. He was hyperventilating. The wand was burning his hand now, the wood radiating a heat that felt like holding a coal. It wanted more. It had always fought him when he tried to be gentle, but now that he was feeding it panic and aggression, the wand was singing. "He's flanking left," a voice shouted. Barnaby wasn't flanking, he was trying to stay alive. He saw a shadow move to his right, a Death Eater trying to get a clear shot. Barnaby swung the wand in a wide, clumsy arc. Expelliarmus! Usually, a disarming charm is a clean beam of red light that knocks a wand from a hand. But through the firewood, it was a chaotic wave of magnetic force. It didn't just target the wand, it targeted everything metal. The nearby gutters ripped away from the roof. An iron trash bin launched itself sideways. The Death Eater didn't just lose his wand. He was lifted off his feet and slammed into the brick wall of the apothecary as if hit by a giant, invisible fist. 2 down, 120 seconds. The remaining 5 were cautious now. They realized this wasn't a duel. This was a brawl. They stopped firing individual curses and began to coordinate. "Shields up!" the leader roared. "Suppressing fire on my mark!" Barnaby huddled behind the corner of the apothecary. He could hear them advancing, their boots crunching on the glass and stone he had scattered. He checked his own internal resources. His magical core felt battered, like he had run 10 miles. The wand was vibrating so hard his arm shook up to the elbow. It was overheating. If he cast too much more, the wood might split, and the backlash would kill him.
If this forgotten legend of Hogwarts is already touching your heart and you would like to help keep these stories alive,
you can support the channel by clicking the thanks button below the video. Every little bit helps me continue bringing you more hidden tales of courage and magic. 90 seconds. They were closing the distance. He could hear the swish of their cloaks. He needed to create a barrier. He needed to buy time. He thought of the Transfiguration exam he had failed last month. He was supposed to turn a hedgehog into a pincushion. He had turned it into a sea urchin that exploded spikes in every direction. He peeked around the corner. The 5 Death Eaters were 10 yards away, advancing behind shimmering Protego shields. They looked invincible. Barnaby pointed the wand at a large puddle of rainwater and mud between him and the attackers. "Duoro," he croaked. "Glissio." He mixed the spells. It was a theoretical impossibility. You can't harden liquid and make it slippery at the same time. The magical theory says the intentions cancel out. But the Firewood didn't care about theory. It cared about intent. And Barnaby's intent was pure, desperate obstruction. The spell vomited from the wand in a grey sludge. The puddle flash froze into stone, but the surface shimmered with a frictionless oil slick that defied gravity. The spell ricocheted, hitting the walls, the ground, the debris. The entire alleyway transformed into a jagged, frictionless ice rink of grey stone. The advancing Death Eaters hit the patch. The first 2 went down instantly, their boots finding no purchase on the unnatural surface. They slipped, their arms flailing, and their shield charms flickered out as their concentration broke. "Stupefy!" Barnaby screamed, thrusting the wand blindly over the corner. Again, no beam, just a concussive boom of red light. It hit the slick stone and refracted. The spell split into 3 erratic bolts, bouncing off the walls like balls in a pinball machine. One bolt hit a falling Death Eater in the chest. Another missed wide. The third ricocheted off a drain pipe and took the leader in the ear, spinning him around. 3 down, 3 struggling to stand on the impossible ice. 1 still standing, a witch with wild hair who had levitated herself just before hitting the slick. 60 seconds. The witch snarled and slashed her wand. A whip of fire lashed out, seeking Barnaby. He ducked, feeling the heat scorch his hair. The fire struck the wall behind him, turning the brick to slag. She was good. She was hovering inches above the ground, gliding toward him, her eyes fixed on his throat. "Petrificus totalis!" she shouted. Barnaby dived. His limbs snapped together for a second as the curse grazed him, but the adrenaline broke the hold. He rolled into the mud, gasping. He was cornered. The ice patch was behind him, the witch in front. The other Death Eaters were starting to crawl out of the blast zone. He looked at his wand. It was glowing cherry red. Cracks were forming along the grain. It had 1 more spell in it, maybe 2. If he miscalculated, it would blow his hand off. The witch raised her wand for the kill. She was smiling. She thought he was done. She thought he was just a scared boy with a broken stick. Barnaby didn't aim at her. He aimed at the wall of the Hog's Head Inn, directly above where the Death Eaters were struggling to stand. There was a heavy iron sign there, hanging on rusted chains. A massive boar's head made of solid cast iron. "Wingardium Leviosa," Barnaby said. "It is the first spell every child learns. It is the spell of feathers and floating chalk. It is gentle. It is light. The Firewood wand did not do gentle. It shrieked. A beam of white force, thick as a trunk, slammed into the iron sign. It didn't float it. It ripped it from the masonry with the violence of a catapult launch. But instead of lifting it up, Barnaby whipped the wand down. The iron boar, weighing easily 300 pounds, didn't just fall. It was driven downward by the overcharged gravity of the spell. It smashed into the ground exactly where the 3 struggling Death Eaters were trying to regain their footing. The impact shook the teeth in Barnaby's skull. The ground buckled. Dust and stone debris erupted like a geyser. The witch, hovering in the air, was caught in the updraft of the shockwave. She lost her focus, her levitation faltered, and she dropped into the chaotic cloud of dust. 30 seconds. Barnaby couldn't see anything. The alley was a fog of pulverized stone and dust. He could hear coughing. He could hear groans. He stood up, his legs shaking so badly he almost collapsed. He held the wand out, the tip fading from red to a dull, smoking gray. A figure stumbled out of the dust. It was the leader. His mask was cracked in half, revealing a bleeding nose and eyes wide with rage. He raised his wand. His hand was shaking, but the killing curse doesn't require a steady hand, only hate. "Avada," he began. Barnaby had nothing left. No spells, no tactics. He did the only thing the Firewood was good for. He threw it. He hurled the burning hot blackthorn stick like a dagger. It wasn't magic, it was desperation. The wand spun through the air, end over end. The Death Eater, expecting a spell, flinched and tried to shield. The wand hit the Death Eater's shield charm. The magical core of the wand, unstable and critically overheated, reacted to the pure energy of the shield. There was no incantation, just a sound like a thunderclap trapped in a bottle. The wand detonated. Barnaby was thrown backward into the mud. The world went white, then black. When he opened his eyes, the silence was heavy. The rain had started to fall again, washing away the dust. He pushed himself up on his elbows. His ears were ringing with a high, piercing whine. The alley was a ruin. The cobblestones were gone, replaced by a crater. The walls of the shops were pitted and scarred. And, scattered across the ground, like discarded dolls, were 7 figures in black robes. The leader was unconscious, his robes smoking. The wand, Barnaby's Firewood, was gone, vaporized. Only a few splinters remained near the epicenter of the blast. Pop, pop, pop. The distinct cracks of apparition signaled the arrival of the Aurors. Red robes swarmed the alley. Moody was there, his magical eyes spinning wildly. He took in the scene. The 7 incapacitated dark wizards, the destroyed street, the shattered iron sign. His eye stopped on Barnaby, who was sitting in the mud, nursing a bleeding hand, looking utterly ordinary. "Who did this?" Moody barked, his wand sweeping the perimeter for the squad that must have ambushed the Death Eaters. "Where is the rest of your unit, lad?" Barnaby looked at the empty space where his wand used to be. He looked at the cellar door, still intact, still locked, the students inside safe. "It was just me," Barnaby whispered. "Just me and some firewood." The official report would later describe the event as an anomaly. They would attribute the victory to a malfunctioning ward stone or a backfiring curse from the Death Eaters. It was easier for the ministry to believe in a magical accident than to accept that a mediocre Hufflepuff with a broken stick had outgunned a kill squad. Barnaby never corrected them. He bought a new wand the next week. Oak, unicorn hair, very reliable, very boring. He passed his newts with acceptable grades. He went on to work in the Department of Magical Transportation, handling portkey logistics. But sometimes, late at night in the Hog's Head, the old patrons still talk about the night the alley exploded. They talk about the boy who fought like a cornered badger, who took the mockery of the world, the clumsiness, the lack of grace, the overpowering bluntness, and turned it into a weapon. They realized too late that raw power, untamed and ugly, is still power. And when the darkness closes in, you don't need a conductor. You need a demolitionist. If this forgotten legend of Hogwarts touched your heart, tell me in the comments. What would you have done in Barnaby's place? Like the video, share it with another Harry Potter fan, and subscribe to hear more hidden stories of courage, magic, and impossible odds. Sometimes the smallest spell is the one that saves the castle.